August 6, 1945, the world witnessed something that until then was considered a fantasy. Something that would change the world forever, for the better, for the worse. A dream that would put a stop to endless carnage on battlefields across the globe. They saw an atomic bomb, an innovation that reimagined our world today, raising ethical wartime questions, the rights of the scientists to innovate versus the responsibility of creating a weapon of mass destruction. As a result of this innovation, the threat of nuclear war continues today. But where did this all start? How did we get to this point? We'll have to flash back to where it all began.
Although most people in 1939 may have never dreamt of such a thing, remarkably, the first steps towards such an invention happened in a humble laboratory off the streets of Berlin. On a seemingly normal night, three scientists, Dr. Otto Hahn, Dr. Louis Meitner, and Dr. Fritz Stresemann, were startled to accidentally split a uranium atom. As the story goes, the three colleagues were bombarding uranium with neutrons when they came across a tremendous amount of energy that originated from the atoms. Information regarding what happened directly following this breakthrough was scarce. However, the discovery was announced in January of 1939, where it made the world wonder what would happen next. Unfortunately, it was not long until such a discovery would be put in the wrong hands. It was a rising concern that the Nazis have been working on a project with a new scientific invention involving nuclear power. A fellow German who had a big impact on the project as well, Einstein, proposed a new idea to Roosevelt that could combat the Germans' new war weapons. This idea created the first notable traces of the creation of a weapon with such capabilities. Despite common belief, the work did not begin here. It was only later when the government pushed to abandon their past beliefs and take initiative on what could have been a war. Based on the Germans' profound discovery, Einstein theorized the ability of using uranium's power in a chain reaction that could spark enough power equivalent to a bomb with such mass. It was a concern to Roosevelt that the funds of a project this risky would be high, but after a talk with other officials, he decided to explore atomic energy. Albert Einstein and a physicist named Leo Szilard, a refugee from Hungary, worked to convince that atomic bombs were the stepping stone into a new power of military weapons use. And with Hitler more than happy to use a bomb with this power, it was foolish not to begin as soon as possible. Many European scientists that fled the Nazi occupation were more than ready to initiate a program with bombs of this power using atomic energy. It was then announced by Roosevelt that he approved early uranium research. This would be the beginning to creating the vision that Einstein had in mind.
In the 1940s, tensions were rising in America. Citizens and lawmakers alike questioned their involvement in World War II. The debate ceased on one fateful day in the winter of 1941. December 7th was the day something happened that is referred to by historians as the turning point of the war, Pearl Harbor. As the World War raged on, the Japanese saw it as a chance to easily seize Pacific waters. Japan advanced, taking the Philippines and many Allied possessions, so the only thing that was stopping them was the U.S. Japan hoped for a short war, seeking to weaken the powerful U.S. Navy that stood between them and their main targets. The attack went just as planned, decimating naval fleets and supplies alike. However, something that Japan did not consider was the enraged Americans that were becoming restless due to their involvement in the war. In fact, the then conflicted government was pushed to question their participation in the war, now more than ever. Hitler, although at first praising the Japanese, soon found himself in quite the problem. The U.S. joined the World War.
The Manhattan Project was marked by innovation, military strategy, and foreign relations, so it seemed fit to recruit those who have such skills. Many scientists played very important roles in the construction of the first atomic bomb. An example could be J. Robert Oppenheimer, who had extensive research and experience with theoretical physics. Although many believed it wasn't possible, the minds and professions of thousands of people who took part of the nuclear power took it to a whole new meaning. Many international relations were formed during these trying times, since many countries around the globe, primarily from Europe, contributed their military power to stop the growing Nazi reign. Not only were the scientists from the U.S. helped, but also the foreign geniuses who took their knowledge from the home to the project. Take Leo Szilard, for example, as he worked closely with Einstein. Coming from Hungary, living in Nazi-occupied Germany, he was one of the earliest people in believing that atomic power was the next generation of military weapons. Another scientist, Hans A. Bethe, created nuclear fission theorem to explain the chemical reaction that gives off heat energy in stars, which was later incorporated in the atomic bomb. Ernest Old Lawrence invented the ciliotron, which was used to accelerate nuclear particles high enough so they can disintegrate atoms. Similarly, Glenn Seaborg was another key factor, as his discovery of plutonium-239 helped nuclear technology in involving the bomb. At this stage, it became clear that anyone with the correct assets and resources could make a contribution. Although the project's roots were all from scientific discoveries and technology, the design was the work of industrial and engineering masters. Many scientists and physicists even work with engineers, technicians, laborers, and even carpenters to direct the project in the right direction.
Despite doubts, the urgency of the war pushed for efforts to overlook atomic research in a unified program. In the spirit of development, facilities across the country were established to oversee growth of different aspects of the project. Specific scientists and engineers were placed in different facilities based on their respective professions. In total, there were 3 centers of operation: Hanford, Washington; Los Alamos, New Mexico; and Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The main purposes of these locations were for materials, scientific research, and industrial empowerment. Each of these 3 facilities had their own priorities, like Oak Ridge's responsibility for enriching uranium and the use for the bomb, as well as working as the top headquarters for the mission. The place where plutonium was being maintained and transferred was Hanford, Washington, where most of plastic plutonium came from. It became a massive industrial complex, including chemical separation plants, fuel fabrication facilities, and production-scale reactors. These 2 facilities played a big role in shipping the materials that were studied and researched at Los Alamos, assembled by Leslie R. Groves. Implosion methods and theories were discussed at Los Alamos and soon proved to be important at Trinity after conducting the first atomic explosion. All of these manufacturing facilities, known as the secret communities, created the main essentials for both bombs. Despite many problems and shortages in physicists and supplies, the final designs were complete at Los Alamos and were soon ready for shipment at Tinian Island, where they would be deployed. The work of relevant corporations and private companies worked for 2 weapons weighing 20,500 pounds and having an explosion force of 36,000 pounds of TNT. The mission was one step closer to success.
It was July 16, 1945, when the initial atomic detonation occurred. This historical achievement, known as the Trinity test, is often referred to by historians as the first atomic eruption. It was a plutonium implosion device that was unlike anything ever seen before. As tensions seemed to dissipate, the U.S. found themselves in a rather comfortable position in the war. In fact, in 1945, Hitler passed away and Germany had to surrender the newfound Western and European land. This cession weakened Japan, who were a clear ally to Germany. Japan, noticing its flaws, decided to recede their military and defend their country. However, it was far too late. On August 6, 1945, the bomb was loaded onto Tinian Island into a B-29 superfortress called Enola Gay, a place that would soon become an icon in America. It was specifically designed for heavyweight atomic bombs, like Little Boy, which was a uranium gun-type bomb. Its first target was Hiroshima because of its perfect commercial and military importance to Japan. It was 8:15 local time when the bomb dropping occurred, and it directed 19,000 feet above city center. The bomb brought with it 13 kilotons of force, and it immediately killed 70,000 to 80,000 people, and over a 4-month period, it killed roughly 160,000 people, and that number kept growing due to radiation sickness and cancers.
Unfortunately for Japan, it would only be a few days before another force of mass destruction would happen, Fat Man killing thousands in Nagasaki. Likewise, it was delivered to its target in a B-29 called Boxcar. Differing from Little Boy, the second bomb, codenamed Fat Man, ran on plutonium fuel, and it was said to be a much bigger of an explosion than Little Boy. The Japanese, after Hiroshima, were suffering the after effects of the bomb and worried what it would do to the country economically and physically. But the deal was set, and on August 9, 1945, Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki, which was once a simple foreign trade city. Though being a reasonable location, it was a last resort due to the weather conditions in Kokura that would interfere with the precision of the drop. Greater than the once biggest atomic attack in history only a few days before, Fat Man created a 22-kiloton explosion and initially killed around 30% of the whole city. It was estimated that around 60 to 80,000 people were killed from the direct attack or exposure to high levels of radiation. This attack put Japan in a vulnerable position, and on August 14th, it was announced that Japan surrendered, marking one of the last steps before World War II would end.
In the midst of war and havoc spanning generations, it's no secret that the world is not what it used to be. In fact, it seems that the only thing that has stayed constant in our world today is the drive that we as people had to pioneer and create change. The events of August 1945 are no exception to this generalization. The Nhd Manhattan Project, as those where innovation met destruction, created the pathway to new phenomena, although once considered impossible. From the world's most relevant scars and discoveries to the responsibility of the nation's most powerful to stop many gruesome battles, the Manhattan Project pushes us to question whether collateral damage is worth it. Although being controversial, one thing is certain: it changed the ethics of science and history forever.